Abroad Pod with James Davis.
Hello, listener. Happy Star Wars Day, and thank you so much for joining us on this, the first anniversary edition of the Teaching Abroad Pod, coming at you on May the 4th. I'm your host, James Davis, and with me this week will be my co-hosts, Alex and Rowan from the Oxford Seminars Job Placement Service. Over the past year, we've spoken to Oxford Seminars graduates, instructors, recruiters, and even a few special guests. In today's episode, we'll take a little look back at some of our favorite moments. Rowan, how have you found podcasting this past year?
I've really actually enjoyed it, James. I was a bit nervous at first, I would say, and even a little skeptical, honestly, about how we do, but we seem to be doing all right. We keep getting great guests. People keep coming back to our YouTube channel and onto the podcast apps to listen again every other week. So I'll keep coming back every other week with my friends here, and yeah, why not keep it going?
How about you, Alex?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it too. I'm a big podcast fan and listener myself, so it's kind of nice to make your own little contribution to the genre, and it's been like a lot of fun learning experiences. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. What about you, James?
I think that, you know, as I mentioned at the start, we have had a lot of different guests, but for me, I want to highlight the graduates and instructors that we've spoken to along the way. You know, it's been really interesting getting to hear their stories and just getting to know them a little bit better. I guess if I had to highlight one particular graduate, it would be Hayley Kellum. We've had her a couple of times on the podcast now. She's taught in Beijing. She's now in Korea. She's told us some really crazy stuff. You know, I lived in Korea for a long time, and she has done some stuff that I would never have thought of doing while in Korea. Hearing her stories, you know, it makes me think that maybe I missed some opportunities. Like, I think, you know, there was some bizarre stuff out there in Korea, and I didn't find them, but she did. So it's really nice to hear about all the things that she got up to.
Wish I'd gone to the Meerkat Cafe, James. I've never seen a meerkat in my life.
I know, like, how do you even discover that? I don't know, but that's why we need people like Hayley to find these things for us.
I don't think there's a better cafe expert on the planet than Hayley, potentially. It's a bold claim, but it's the impression I get.
Yeah, no, if she deserves a trophy, it's Expat Cafe champion of Korea, I would say. She knows her stuff.
Going back to your question, a lot of the cafe scene is like unreal compared to anywhere else in the world. So I think like my favorite thing is like how unique some of the cafes are around here. And I would definitely highly suggest like several cafes around Seoul.
I read there's one where they have sheep you can pet. Have you seen that?
Yes, I've seen that, but I've not been to it. Oh, yeah. I've also seen that they have like a goat one, like a baby goat cafe. Yeah, it's
like a petting zoo / cafe.
Yeah, like a whole little like zoo. I have gone to the Meerkat Cafe. So they have meerkats and raccoons and wallabies. So I did go to that one, and that was really interesting because I've never seen a meerkat in real life until I came here, and I just didn't think that I would come to Korea and do that. So
sounds like something from National Geographic.
Right.
Are they friendly? I can't even imagine. I thought they would just run away.
They are friendly, and they like burrow. They try to burrow in anything. So you have to like wear a blanket all around you because they'll try to get into your clothes. So gotta be careful.
And we really found that out too, I guess, she was on, was it episode 15 as well with us, where she talked about her trip to Jeju. She gave us a real breakdown of different sites to see, cafes to visit.
You've since made it to Jeju Island, which you said you were looking forward to seeing last time we spoke. So what were your highlights?
Oh God, what wasn't a highlight? What wasn't like a good part? I spent like the entire week in Jeju, and I did 5 days in the like beach city, like Sogwipo area. Yeah, it's a very beachy, and so there was a lot of waterfalls to see and like a lot of hiking. Like I really liked that part, but I'm not really the hiking type of person. So I actually prefer the like leisure, like relaxing, fancy cafe style of that's my kind of vacation, I guess.
So, you know, Jeju is slightly different to the rest of Korea. it's a little bit more tropical. Did you have any culinary experiences? Any nice food? So you mentioned some Jeju cafes. What was that side of Jeju like?
Well, pretty much most of the cafes are either like inland and very foresty and like nature, or like on the coast. So you have like beach views everywhere. Really, like I really just enjoy the scenery and the views. For culinary experiences, unfortunately, I have like a very hard diet restriction, I guess. Like I can't eat gluten. It's really hard to like find the foods that I can eat. So usually when I go to cafes, I'm only just drinking coffee. I never can try any of the pastries or the desserts. But I did have, since it's Jeju, it's an island and seafood is very like common. So I did try sushi and some seafood dishes. I love seafood, so I really like it. But a lot of people don't realize that coming from America, and when you order fish usually comes like, it's like just a fillet of fish. And here it comes like the whole fish straight out of the ocean on the plate. And so you have to pick out all the bones and things. And that's not something I was expecting when I first came to Korea. Like maybe some of my foreign friends would say like they don't like seafood really anymore because they have to pick all the bones out of the fish and stuff. But I personally don't mind. I've got quite good at it now. So
it was really nice to see Haley's journey progress, and hopefully we'll get to speak to her again in the future. If I want to highlight an instructor over the past year, I guess it has to be Brent. He's another return guest. Both episodes, he was, wonderful. Such an interesting guy. He's been everywhere. He's done everything, and he's someone that is really good at just giving some advice about safe travel and how to enjoy yourself. And despite all of his wisdom, I feel like all we wanted to know about was him teaching and drinking wine at a Czech castle.
So the most frequent summer camp I've visited, I've been there 5 times now, is in Valtice, which is a small town in the south of the Czech Republic. I came across this job from a friend of a friend who had posted that he was looking for teachers. My friend tagged me in the post, so I responded. And he started texting me. He's like, "Let me call you." I'm like, "Okay, sure." He's like, "Let me explain the school." He said, "It's built around music and wine. It's called Pavel's English School." And he said, "Your job is you teach English all day, but then 3 nights through the week, you take your students to a wine cellar, continue your English lessons, and drink wine." And I was like, "Yep, I'm in."
Wow.
Yeah, it's a absolutely beautiful region. The school used to be run out of Chateau Valtice, which is they call it a castle, but it's not like your typical like wartime castle. It's more of a resort, like a medieval era resort, I would call it, where the royalty would go to for their summers kind of thing. Yeah.
So how long would this last?
So the course, you go for 2 weeks. You go there for 2 weeks. The students come for 1 week each, so you have 2 sessions. But it's fantastic. I'm still in touch with many of the students I've taught there. I've seen them, even most of them I've seen for 1 week each summer for 5 consecutive summers, but we've just built a bond and a friendship over that. It's great.
Yeah, go back to episode 2, definitely. Anyone who hasn't been there, just the title alone, getting paid to drink wine and teach ESL. I mean, I'm in.
It sounds hyperbolic, but it's absolutely true. That's exactly what he did. And then, we spoke to him in the second ever episode. He was wonderful. We had him back again, episode 16, where we kind of discussed more of his journeys further afield. As you guys know, on the Teaching Abroad pod, it had to be about food. And he didn't disappoint by taking us through Thai cuisine and then, talking about all the stuff he ate in Vietnam. So move away from Europe, is there anywhere in Asia, anything in particular you want to highlight as being a culinary highlight for you?
Ooh, I've had some excellent meals in most places. I mean, Thailand, I think I would argue has the best food in the world. The complexity of the flavor, the diversity of dishes is really, really good. So I'll place that pretty high. Even like for 60 cents from a street vendor, you can get an amazing pad thai, something like that. Yeah. We had some great pho in Vietnam. There's a tiny little hole in the wall pho restaurant, and they had like the vat they're making the soup in. And we went back there, I would say 5 or 6 times. Like we went there once, like this is amazing. So we kept going back. And we asked them about it, and that cauldron of soup has been continuously boiling since the 1940s.
Ooh.
They have been cooking and they just keep adding water and keep adding new ingredients. And that's how they say they get the richness of flavor. This, you never clean it, you never empty it, you just keep adding, keep adding, keep adding. And I was like, where else am I going to get an experience like that? This soup's been literally simmering for 50 years. That was an incredible dish. And again, literally, like, it maybe could seat 6 people in there, just little plastic stools, and like you could easily miss it. And we just lucked out that we happened to go to that one. And I'm sure maybe there's others that we missed that were just as good, but that sticks in my mind for sure.
I want to go back to Hanoi so badly. Like, it's unbelievable. For me, that's my favorite food. I think Vietnamese is just unbelievable.
It is. Like they do so many, like they do the soups and things very well, noodle dishes, of course. But then because of the French colonial influence, like sandwiches, like banh mi's, like they make excellent bread and fantastic coffee. Like it's very different than the rest of Southeast Asia in that way, I find, or I think. Like most places I went in Asia, the coffee was okay, but in Vietnam, it's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you feel about egg coffee though?
It was a unique experience. I quite liked it.
Yeah.
It was neat to watch the whole process, and then sort of like almost like a curdled custard, I guess it turns into. I thought it was pretty good.
Big thanks to Brent for being such a wonderful guest. Rowan, do you have any particular highlights from the past year?
I guess for me, and I was so ecstatic when I got the email back where this guest said, "Sure, I'll jump on your pod with you." Ross Rebagliati, the first ever Canadian Olympic snowboard champion. He was on way back in January 26th release, episode 21. Yeah, just what an honor to be able to have an Olympic champion on the podcast, especially for me, because, growing up, I was big into skiing, a little bit of, not that I was very good at it, but freestyle, jumps and moguls and all that kind of stuff. And then to have a snowboarder of his caliber talking about his experience on the tour abroad, and then his sort of rise to glory in Nagano 98, and then I guess somewhat fall from grace with the drug charge in Japan, where pot was not such an accepted pastime. Hearing him tell that story of, winning and being in jail and then flying to LA to be on Leno and all of that, quite enthralling to hear it from the horse's mouth.
My first race on the World Cup tour, I got 80th, right? And I was like champion back home, right? And so it was a huge wake up call and a big learning curve for me I was almost not good enough to be there, basically. But right away, visually, I was able to see very quickly what everybody was doing differently than I was. And I was on a pro team with coach and setting gates and courses every day and riding with other top-notch riders on my team too, traveling with them around the world. So within, 1 year, I made the podium.
Was that the point where the Olympics were on the horizon and then that became your big professional goal?
So all along, snowboarding was applying to the IOC to become a Olympic event or an Olympic sport, but not until 94 did they announce to us that in 98 we would be a full medal event.
Just quickly wondering, after that big win, you were kind of a media darling for a while there. How did that feel to be like in the spotlight after that?
It was pretty incredible. I was a little bit or a lot distracted by the controversy of the whole positive weed thing, and obviously, and then going to LA I literally flew from Tokyo to LA to do the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and right at the LA airport, customs already had an issue with me, and they were already considering not letting me in to go to the Tonight Show, but I was already like visually recognizable in Los Angeles by the next day. Like, I showed up at the Beverly Hilton that night, and just tourists coming out of the hotel were recognizing me, like, "You're the snowboarder, from Nagano. We just saw you on TV like 2 days ago," or whatever it was. And meanwhile, I'd been in jail, right? Like they put me in jail, and were processing me before, because they took my medal away, and then in between when they took it away and gave it back, like, I went to jail, right? They weren't gonna.
You're actually in a jail cell in Japan.
in Nagano.
That was a real highlight for me to have sort of a childhood hero, or at least a teenage hero, I guess. Someone I really admired and looked up to growing up, to be talking to him. But you, Alex?
Yeah, that Ross episode reminds me of, seems to be, if the guests are doing all the talking, then you've done your job well. And it's funny because some people are a bit more nervous to come on and want to prepare, and other people are really happy to just speak off the cuff. We've had some schools and recruiters on, so not just teachers and people thinking about teaching. And we had one guest, Madeline Moon from Teacher Tech Recruiting, recruits for Korea. And Madeline was the kind of guest where I think she was a bit nervous. She wanted to prepare some answers ahead of time. We had to kind of coax her on, but she just did a really wonderful job. She's got almost 3 decades of experience in the industry, talked about the development of the ESL industry over the past 3 decades in Korea and sort of how it's matured and what she's seen in all those years of experience, told some great stories. And then also it was just interesting because like Korean pop culture is having such a moment the last year or two in the zeitgeist with the K-pop music and movies and TV shows that we've all been watching and loving. So it was interesting just to have her perspective on sort of being in the middle of something, of a culture when it's kind of just having its moment. And I'm sure that's driving more and more interest in teaching in Korea.
We couldn't stop talking about Squid Game for a couple episodes there.
Yeah, we weren't the only ones. So we've talked a lot about teaching in Korea and how it's such a popular teaching destination. And you've talked about how the industry has grown and matured. But another thing that I'm thinking maybe is part of a factor is just the rise of pop culture and how, how much Korean culture has entered pop culture,
Yes.
in music and all the famous ways. And food is a big part of that.
It's crazy. First, talk about a little bit of the pop culture. Like when I growing up, did I even, again, imagining this is going to happen? People's gonna watch Korean TV drama in the United States, like a Squid Game, Parasite, like you name it, So yeah, that's just really crazy. And I feel like just being Korean is kind of almost hip right now. And then, yeah, the Korean dishes, there's so many, obviously, and seems like there's like a lot of even new kind of food, like, a lot of it with like, cheese and, like even tteokbokki is melted with cheese, ramen with melted with cheese, corn dog, hot dog with the melted cheese. I think those are kind of new things that people crazy about it. I think of food, there's so many different flavors, so many dishes you can try, and you can find things you like. Even if you're not a big fan of spicy, there's plenty choices. Even if these days, a lot of people are actually vegetarian, gluten-free. Korean food can be very vegetarian friendly, gluten-free friendly, because we don't really eat bread as a, basic food. Yeah. But actually my favorite food is really dumpling.
I feel embarrassed because one of my favorite things is what you talked about at the beginning, and it's cheese raw poke, which is, it's very childish, but it's so delicious.
And then another recent recruiter we had was Phil from ESL Starter, based in the UK. And I thought Phil's story was interesting just because he started off as an ESL teacher in Thailand. And that was just sort of a change from a sort of humdrum desk job back in the UK.
So I decided to take a TEFL course, which I took up in Newcastle in the UK. After that course, I looked for some jobs on the internet. I applied for a job in Thailand, and I actually got the job without any interview or any kind of contact with the school apart from an initial sending of the CV. So yeah, I was kind of a little bit flummoxed. I didn't know if it was a real genuine job or if it was, what to expect, but I did accept, and then went over to teach in Thailand. So yeah, it was fantastic. It was absolutely brilliant job. Really enjoyed it. So I would definitely do the same thing again if I had my chance over again.
Did you teach anywhere else besides Thailand, or was Thailand the only spot you taught?
Yeah, I did actually. So I spent 5 years in Thailand, about 2 years altogether in South Korea, and then 1 year teaching in Taiwan.
So how did you make the move into international teacher recruiting?
Yeah, so I was teaching in Thailand actually, and the principal of the school at the time asked me to find a couple of teachers to come in to replace myself and my wife, who were teaching at the school. So we did a little bit of promotion on the internet. We actually found 2 teachers to come and take those roles on. And that just gave us the idea to kind of contact a few private schools in Korea. So it was really, really fortunate, but it's been really enjoyable as well.
So I think it's one of those stories where going overseas to teach, to travel, it is an adventure and you never really know where it's going to lead. And I don't think Phil set off for Thailand thinking he'd one day be a recruiter, but lo and behold, that's what happened. So yeah, another interesting story.
Thank you guys for sharing your highlights with me and the listeners. We say at the end of every episode, and perhaps people don't get there all the time. I'm certainly guilty of skipping the ending of podcasts sometimes. But if you do have anyone that you think we should speak to, or you think we need more of a certain type of guest, do get in touch with us. You can reach us on social media at Oxford Seminars on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or you can email us directly at teachingabroadpod@oxfordseminars.com. Don't be shy. Reach out to us because we'd love to hear from you, and we hope to have some more amazing guests over the next year and beyond. So with that, thank you very much, Alex. Thank you very much, Rowan. Thanks to our producer, Kat. And thank you, listener, for tuning in to the Teaching Abroad pod, where we release episodes every other Wednesday. May the 4th be with you.